Dawn unfurled, painting the storm-scarred fields of lytutien's farm with pale light. The air thick with damp earth and the scent of shattered timber. Jack stood, a steadfast figure amidst the chaos, his boots sinking into the yielding ground, directing a small, earnest crew as they wrestled with the aftermath of yesterday's landslide. The kitchen, a fragile breath of a wooden structure, its palm leaf roof a tattered blanket, sagged precariously, pillars cracked and walls splintered. Strewn around were fragments of a life. Bowls broken, a pot dented like a twisted fate, and a broom tangled in mud, as if clinging to sorrow. Jack wiped sweat from his brow, his voice calm yet infused with urgency. "Everyone, help me move all this stuff into the main house first. Sister, can you take everything inside for me?" A woman in a faded blue shirt nodded, gathering an armful of broken dishes. "I'll handle it, Jack. Let me grab the bowls first." Jack turned to a burly man named Ben, who was pondering a broken chair. "Brother Ben, come over here for a sec?" Ben looked up, brushing dirt from his hands. "Sure, Jack, what do you need?" Jack handed Ben a pair of pliers, his gaze sweeping over a pile of splintered planks. "Let's start dismantling this kitchen. We need to clear the path for the truck to bring in the dirt this afternoon." Ben nodded, throwing himself into the task with focused intensity, while Jack directed another helper to move a rusted bucket. "This goes out back, brother." "Oh wait, that one needs to go inside the house." "Yes, put it in there." The woman with the dishes chimed in, her voice brimming with curiosity. "Jack, when are you bringing in the dirt? You're tearing down the kitchen for the truck to get through, right?" Jack nodded, prying a loose nail from a beam, as if detaching from an old memory. "Exactly, sister. Once we clear this, the truck can come in, probably this afternoon." The crew worked in harmony, their movements swift but careful. The creaking wood and clinking metal a symphony of reconstruction. As they progressed, Jack spotted a stubborn plank stubbornly embedded in the ground. "This needs a crowbar. There's one inside the house, brother. Can you grab it for me?" Ben hurried off, then returned with the tool, and together they pried the plank free, revealing a tangle of roots beneath, like the hidden veins of the past. "Everything here needs to go," Jack said, his hand sweeping towards the ruined kitchen walls, as if erasing an old page. "Take it all down." They hauled the debris to a clearing, sweat dripping from their faces. The morning heat intensified, as if melting everything in its path. Jack paused, his eyes scrutinizing the sagging roof. "We need to take down this whole section now, roof included. But first, let me cut the power." He moved to a rusted electrical box, flipping the switch. "I've cut the power, sister," he called to the woman, who was clearing the last of the dishes, signaling a new beginning. Ben climbed a rickety ladder, his voice cautious. "I'll start from the top, dismantle the roof first." Jack nodded, but the woman looked up, her eyes wide with worry. "Sister, make sure you clear all the stuff from that side too. Move it into the house." As Ben tugged at the palm leaves, the roof groaned ominously, like a sigh before surrendering. Jack's eyes widened. "Brother, stop, it's going to collapse. Get down now." Ben scrambled down just as a beam snapped, the roof sagging further like a heart ceasing to beat. "Let's just push it down and deal with it later," Jack said, his hand steadying the ladder, holding on to hope. "We'll cut the steel wires, let it fall, and then clear the palm leaves." He grabbed a coil of electrical wire, untangling it, as if unraveling knots in his mind. "Brother Ben, help me get this ladder out of the way." They worked quickly, Ben hooking the wires as Jack instructed. "Now I'll cut this wire, brother. Push that end up to make it collapse." Jack hesitated, grabbing a sturdy pole. "Wait, let me get this first. Are you ready, brother?" Ben nodded, bracing himself, like a soldier ready for battle. Go for it. Push it up. With a loud crack, the roof gave way, palm leaves scattering across the ground, like fragments of memory. Jack directed the cleanup, his voice firm. Brother, prop this pole here, I'll pry the rest. Hold it steady. Ben supported the structure as Jack worked, the debris piling up, like layers of time. All right, step back. We'll dismantle from top to bottom now, then haul everything over there. The crew separated the two sections of the roof, working in sync. The sound of snapping would echoing across the farm, like the land's quiet sigh. Here are the pliers, sister, Jack said, handing them to the woman, who winced at the state of the leaves as if seeing a wound. These are all rotten, eaten through by insects. Jack nodded grimly, a silent acknowledgement of the destruction. If the leaves are damaged or infested, toss them, sister, Ben called out, stacking the debris. Jack, I'll pile these leaves up there for you. What's left here we'll finish up. Jack wiped his hands on his shirt, his tone grateful but hurried. Thanks everyone, I've got to step out for a bit. Can you handle the rest? Ben waved him off with a grin. Go ahead, Jack, we've got this. The gentle morning light filtered through the wooden slats of Mrs. Ben's humble kitchen, where lytutien sat across from the elderly woman. Between them, a steaming bowl of lyphucan, sticky black rice pudding, emitted wisps of fragrant steam, crowned with a dollop of pure white yogurt. The sweet aroma of the glutinous rice filled the air. Tu Tien took a bite, her eyes immediately lighting up. Auntie, this is so delicious. Did you make it yourself? Mrs. Ben smiled, her weathered hands resting on the table, as if tracing the flow of time. Yes, I cooked the lyphucan myself, but the yogurt I had to buy that. It's not hard to make, just like cooking regular rice. Tu Tien savored another spoonful, her voice soft as a whispered breeze, full of wonder. I've never had this before. It's amazing, Auntie. Is it tricky to cook? Mrs. Ben chuckled, shaking her head. Not at all, dear. I'll teach you sometime, would you like that? Tu Tien nodded eagerly, like a child anticipating a gift. Yes, please. But do we need to buy a special kind of rice? Mrs. Ben nodded. You'll need to get lyphucan. It's a specific variety. Their conversation gradually deepened as Mrs. Ben leaned forward, her voice gentle as a caress. How long have you and Jack known each other, Tu Tien? Tu Tien set down her spoon, her expression softening like a tranquil pond reflecting memories. Almost a year now, Auntie. I used to live up in the mountains. After I left my ex-husband, I came down to the city, but I had nowhere to stay. I lived in a cave near the road for a while. Mrs. Ben's eyes widened, her voice filled with sympathy, as if understanding the pain. Oh, that must have been so hard for you. Tu Tien nodded, her voice steady but tinged with profound gratitude. It was, but then Jack found me. He was managing a construction site nearby and offered to help. I never imagined we'd end up together. To me, he was this handsome, capable man, so kind. I thought he'd have lots of women around him, but somehow he chose me. Mrs. Ben smiled warmly, like morning sun dispelling mist. Jack's a good man, I can see that. Has he changed your life much? Tu Tien's gaze softened even further, like clear water. More than I can say, Auntie. Before him I struggled so much. Now, he takes care of me, gives me money for expenses each month. But with the farm ruined by the storm, I've been thinking, I don't want to just take from him. I feel so useless sometimes, even though he's never made me feel that way. Mrs. Ben reached across the table, patting her hand, as if imparting strength. Don't overthink it, dear. In tough times like these, accept his help, it's okay. You're not a burden. Tu Tien sighed, her voice heavy as if shedding a weight. I know, but when his work hit rough patches, I couldn't do anything to support him. I don't want to be a weight on him. Mrs. Bin's tone turned reflective, as if leafing through pages of memory. I understand, I've been there. When my husband passed, I had to raise my kids and care for my mother alone. It was hard, but I managed, and now I'm at peace. You'll find your way to Tu Tien. Tu Tien nodded, determination flickering in her eyes, like a tiny spark kindling hope. I hope so. I want to rebuild the farm with Jack. Make it ours together so he knows how much I care. Mrs. Bin smiled encouragingly. You already do so much with your harvesting. That's a good start. Tu Tien sighed again. I do, but it's not much. Just a few tens of thousands each time, maybe 100,000 on a good day. I tried raising pigs and chickens to sell, but the flood took everything. Mrs. Bin's eyes lit up with an idea, like a ray of sunshine piercing through clouds. Speaking of harvesting, the plums in my garden are ripe. Why don't you pick some and sell them at the market today? I'm feeling much better now. Tu Tien's face brightened, like a blossoming flower. Really? Your plums, Auntie? That's so kind. I'll go pick them and sell them, then bring you the money. Mrs. Bin waved a dismissive hand, as if brushing off something trivial. Just take a little for me. The rest is yours to keep for your expenses. Tu Tien's voice trembled with gratitude, like a resonating bell. Thank you, Auntie. You treat me like your own daughter. I lost my mother young, so having you means the world to me. Mrs. Bin's eyes softened like moonlight caressing. I only have one daughter, and she's far away. You're like a daughter to me too, Tu Tien. The sun climbed higher, bathing the garden in a warm golden hue as lytutien finished her breakfast with Mrs. Bin, her heart stirring with newfound resolve. She slipped on her woven basket, its straps worn but sturdy, and stepped into the garden where the plum trees stood heavy with ripe fruit. The plums hung in clusters, their deep purple skins taut and glistening like jewels, a sweet promise beckoning her closer. Tu Tien reached up, her fingers brushing the cool fruit as she carefully plucked the ripest ones, their weight filling her basket with each gentle twist. She moved through the rows, the garden alive with the hum of bees and the rustle of leaves, her basket growing heavier with every step. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and she paused under a tree's shade, catching her breath as mosquitoes began their relentless assault, their bites pricking her arms. She swatted at them, her mind drifting to her journey from the mountains. My life's changed so much, she mused, but harvesting like this only earns me a few tens of thousands a day. How can I help Jack build our farm? I can't keep leaning on him. Shaking off her doubts, she adjusted the basket and resolved to reach the market swiftly. Time was precious and the plums wouldn't wait. The trek to the city market stretched several kilometers, the dirt path winding through fields and villages, but Tu Tien's determination propelled her forward. The basket balanced on her shoulder, as if carrying her entire future. Along the way, she passed a bustling roadside stall, its vendor calling out about fresh mangoes, a reminder of the harsh reality of making a living. At the market's edge, she found a spot near a fruit vendor, a kind woman with a face etched by time, who nodded her permission to share the space. Tu Tien spread a cloth on the ground, arranging the plums in neat piles, their vibrant color drawing curious glances from the morning crowd. Fresh plums. Sweet and just picked today, she called out, her voice cutting through the market's clamor of haggling and clattering carts. An elderly woman shuffled over, her eyes crinkling with delight. These look beautiful. How much for a kilo, dear? Tu Tien smiled, selecting the plumpest ones and weighing them on a borrowed scale. 20,000 dong, madam. They're straight from the garden. The woman handed over the money, and soon a man in a faded shirt approached, tasting a sample. "These are delicious, I'll take a kilo," he said, sparking a rush of interest. Word spread and customers flocked, children tugging at their parents' sleeves, a young couple debating quantities, each praising the plum's sweetness and buying more. Within an hour, Tu Tien's stock dwindled, and she set aside one small bag for Mrs. Bin, her heart swelling with pride as she pocketed the earnings. She turned to the vendor, her voice filled with gratitude. "Sister, thank you for letting me share your spot. Can I buy this scale from you?" The woman nodded, naming a modest price, and Tu Tien handed over the cash, tucking the scale into her basket for future use. The market buzzed around her, vendors packing up as the morning rush eased, and she began her journey back, the sun now high and relentless, casting sharp shadows on the path. As she neared Mrs. Bin's gate, the familiar rumble of Jack's truck broke the quiet, dust swirling as he pulled up. He stepped out, his shirt streaked with dirt from the morning's labor, concern etched into his features. "Tu Tien, you look worn out, are you okay?" She brushed off her fatigue with a radiant smile. "I'm fine, dear. I sold nearly everything." Together they entered the house, where Mrs. Bin sat sipping tea, her complexion much improved. Tu Tien handed her the bag of plums and a few small items from the market, a packet of tea, a handful of candied ginger. "Auntie, I sold all the plums, these are for you. I made some money too." She offered the earnings, but Mrs. Bin took only a fraction, then gently placed the rest back in her hands. "Keep this, dear, use it for yourself," she insisted, her voice warm with affection. Tu Tien turned to Jack, her tone eager yet tinged with worry. "How's the farm, dear? Did the cleanup go well?" Jack settled into a chair, wiping his brow. "We took down the kitchen this morning to clear a path for the truck. It'll bring dirt to raise the foundation this afternoon." Tu Tien's eyes sparkled with anticipation, but a flicker of impatience crossed her face. "I've been away too long. I want to get back there." Mrs. Bin nodded, her voice encouraging. "You should go, Tu Tien, focus on your farm. I'm doing better now, so don't worry about me." Jack stood, his tone gentle. "Let's pack your things, we'll head back together. And Auntie, when you're fully recovered, I'll come get you to visit." Tu Tien smiled, her voice soft. "If you need anything, just call me. Okay?" Mrs. Bin patted her hand, her eyes misty. "I will, dear, take care." While Tu Tien packed, Jack lingered with Mrs. Bin, his voice low. "Tu Tien keeps a lot inside, she's thoughtful, almost too much. I want to marry her, but she's got some personal struggles. I'll wait, she's worth it. She's so capable, so resilient." Mrs. Bin nodded, her tone hopeful. "She's a good match for you, Jack. I'd love to see you two wed soon." Tu Tien returned, her bag slung over her shoulder, and approached Mrs. Bin, her voice trembling with emotion. "We're leaving now, Auntie. Please take care of yourself." Mrs. Bin's face fell, a shadow of sadness crossing her features. "I'll miss you, dear, stay safe." Overcome with emotion, Tu Tien dropped her bag and rushed to Mrs. Bin, wrapping her in a tight embrace, tears welling in her eyes. "I'll come back soon, Auntie, I promise," she whispered, her voice breaking. Mrs. Bin handed her a small bundle of buoy, pomelo, and plums, her hands trembling slightly. "Take these for the road and don't forget to rest," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. Jack and Tu Tien climbed into the truck, the engine rumbling to life as they waved goodbye. Mrs. Bin's figure shrinking in the distance, her hand raised in a lingering farewell. On the drive back to the farm, Tu Tien clutched the bundle, her voice soft with reflection. "Auntie was so kind. She told me to pick the plums and wouldn't take much of the money. She's like a mother to me." Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the winding road. "I tore down the kitchen today, it was tough, but we needed the space for the truck to raise the foundation. It's for your safety. Tu Tien's expression turned wistful, her voice laced with deep nostalgia. I know, but that kitchen, I lived there for almost a year. It held so many memories, from late-night meals to quiet mornings with the chickens clucking outside. Jack reached over, gently squeezing her hand, a gesture of comfort. I'll rebuild it, Tu Tien, better than before. I just want a home where you're safe, where we can be together someday. Tu Tien's eyes glistened, her voice heavy with uncertainty. I understand, dear, but if I move in with you, I don't know what I'd do. I've never lived in a proper house, only caves and that old kitchen. What if I can't keep up? I don't want to be a burden. Jack's tone was firm yet tender, his gaze steady like a promise. You're never a burden, Tu Tien. Just do what feels right for you. I'll always be here. I believe in your strength, your spirit. You've already shown me how resilient you are. Tu Tien managed a faint smile, her heart warmed by his faith, though the weight of her past lingered. The truck rumbled on, passing green fields and clusters of village homes, the farm drawing closer with each mile. She glanced at the passing scenery, children playing near a stream, a farmer guiding a water buffalo, her mind racing with possibilities. Could I learn to thrive there? She wondered, her fingers tightening around the bundle of fruit. As they neared the farm, the landscape shifted to the familiar sight of damaged fences and muddy fields, the skeleton of the old kitchen now a pile of debris, like a scar on the land. Tu Tien's breath caught, a mix of sadness and hope stirring within her. It looks so different already, she murmured, peering out the window. Jack nodded, his voice resolute. It's a start. We'll raise the ground, rebuild the house, maybe even add a small porch for you to sit and watch the sunrise. I want this to be your sanctuary. Tu Tien turned to him, her eyes searching his face. And if I can't give you a family? I've been to the doctor, my condition makes it hard. I don't want to disappoint you. Jack's expression softened, his hand still holding hers. We'll face that together if it comes to it. Science can help, or we can find our own way. All I care about is you. Here with me. His words eased her fears, a flicker of courage igniting within her as the truck rolled into the farm's entrance.
Year, 50 years, she talked of how they met and what their life had been like. And I could tell by her stories and the warmth of her tone of voice that she, too, had a happy marriage. Then it was my turn, and all I could do was cry as I told the story of my own husband's battle with cancer and chronic pain. As unquote, I'm used to asking people what they have learned from their experiences, so it was natural for me to ask her for advice on what happened her deal with the crushing grief. Obviously,